Welcome to this week's edition of Book Week. Today we're going to be speaking with author Shawn Goodman about his new young adult book, Something Like Hope. First, Shawn will give us a brief synopsis of his book for those who haven't read it yet. Shawn?
Thank you, Corey. My book, Something Like Hope, takes us through the story of Siobhan, a young juvenile delinquent in the system. We learn throughout the book that she has a mother who is a crack addict, a dead father, a brother who she left at infancy, and she actually has a child of her own that's 2 years old. We first meet with Siobhan when she meets her new therapist at the center, and we see her growth really, and how she becomes this person who blames all her problems on herself, and how she learns that everything that's happened to her in life isn't all her fault. And it's really, I think, if I do say so myself, I think it's a very beautiful story of coming of age and learning about yourself.
Thank you for that summary, Mr. Goodman. Now, how did you find out about the circumstances of the girls in the jail?
Thank you, Corey. Well, as you know, I did spend some time as a therapist myself in a girls' juvenile detention center. And this book was based on my experiences there. I met so many girls that had been labeled as just outcasts and just hopeless, really. And I took the time to get to know them myself and learned that they weren't what they put on the outside. And as for the experiences that I had there, yeah, I did see harsh treatment of the girls by the guards and by their teachers. And it is not at all what I had anticipated going into it. There may have been some slight exaggeration in the book, but it was pretty realistic as to what I experienced while in the juvenile detention center.
Thank you. Now, all of the readers want to know, why don't we learn about Marcus, her younger brother, until the very end of the book?
Well, now, Corey, that is a very good question, and this most definitely was intentional. In the beginning of the book, you learn who Siobhan is, and you learn her background and where she comes from and why she acts the way she does. That doesn't necessarily mean that I gave you every little detail about her life and her parents and her family, but as we get toward the end of the book and you really feel this personal connection with her, I felt it was important to bring another piece of home to really round out the story. So I decided to give her a younger brother and to really go into that story of her guilt and her feelings of responsibility. I mean, guys, you have to remember, at 6 years old, she felt responsible for her little brother, and that is just no place for anyone to be. But now, as we kind of have this big background on her, and we know all of her other experiences, we realize why she reacted the way that she did. So I think it was important that we had a firm foundation in who she was as a person before we could learn about that specific experience.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Goodman, is Siobhan based on anyone that you've met?
Siobhan wasn't based specifically on one girl that I had met while at the facility, but I think elements of her I definitely grabbed from other girls that I worked with and spoke with. For example, there was one girl I met with, and she did have a son who she had left in care in foster home, and she ended up allowing the foster mother to adopt her child, which is, as we know, what happens with Siobhan. So to answer your question, there are elements of her that I have seen in other girls, but she isn't based off of one specific girl.
Thank you. Mr. Goodman, what type of reader would enjoy your book?
That is a good question. I think although this book was originally aimed for the young adult reader, I think really anyone in any walk of life would enjoy it, because the morals and the lessons that Siobhan learns are really applicable to anyone. And although it was written as a realistic fiction book, I don't see why readers who often enjoy other genres wouldn't enjoy this, because it's still applicable to everyday life, and just all the lessons she learns are just really applicable to anyone.
Thank you. Okay, so most readers don't go through the same situation as Siobhan. how do they still manage to relate to her story?
That's a good question, Corey. That is a very good point, that most readers reading this novel don't have the same exact experiences as Siobhan, her very rough childhood, her mother abandoning her, the death of her father. But I feel the story is not necessarily about the specific events that Siobhan goes through, but rather the way she deals with them. Because I feel as human beings, we all have the tendencies to blame ourselves for things that are most often out of our control. And we tend to stay in the past and not be able to look forward, to move forward. And Siobhan does all of these things, but I'm sure many readers also do some of these things. So what I had hoped when writing this book is through Siobhan's story that readers would be able to relate it back to themselves and say, oh, I do that, maybe I shouldn't do this. So I think although we don't all have the same life as Siobhan, we can relate to certain aspects of it, definitely.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Goodman, you were never very clear on what Siobhan did to get into the correctional facility.
Oh, that is true. Very good observation there. I felt that as a writer, it was important for me not to give too many details away, because as writers, we feel this tendency, oh, I need to finish a story, get it all out there. But in this case, I wanted to leave some element of mystery, really, because I did not want... Siobhan is a very mysterious character, and I did not want you to know everything about her. So I felt it was necessary to leave certain details about her out. And I think that I left enough so you could guess. I mean, it said her behavior was bad and that she slept with much older men for money. So I think I definitely gave some possibilities, but I didn't want to outright say what she did, just to give the reader, to let their imagination just take control there a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, so if you were asked to write a sequel to the novel, how would the book go?
Not gonna lie, I have thought about that before, because in one aspect, I left the book off very cleanly, where she has her little happy ending and she sees her brother and she's about to start this new life, but along with that is the greatest element, I think, of mystery. Where is she going to go now? Is she going to get a job? Is she ever going to see her daughter again? So I feel like if I were to write a sequel, her and her newfound brother Marcus, I feel they would find an apartment somewhere and establish a firm life for themselves. And they would really, I think, as we see when Siobhan sees Marcus and she's like, no, I have a plan. She's very motivated now to have a good life for herself. So I think we're going to definitely see her efforts. But I think all her past is still going to come up to haunt her. And she's not going to want to face it. But using the experiences she's learned from something like hope, she will deal with it and ultimately become a better person out of it. But there'd be a lot of struggle, but I think it would end well. I think Siobhan is going to a good place.
Thank you for answering our questions, Mr. Goodman. It's been a pleasure asking you about your novel, and we hope that we can ask you about that sequel next week.
Oh yes, next week is pushing it a little bit there, Corey, but hopefully sometime in the future you will be seeing another book on the shelf from me.
That's all for today, folks.